Hello friends, it's Kat from Meow Meow Kapow. A while ago, I swatched out some Shinhan watercolors from both the Professional line and the PWC line. First of all, if you're not already familiar with the brand, even though one line is called Professional, it's actually their student grade of paints. I know, it's a little bit confusing as far as naming scheme goes, and I actually think it's a bit deceptive, which I'm kind of not cool with, but I digress. If you want to see those original videos, I've linked them up in the iCards as well as down in the doobly-doo, which is where you'll also find all the information on all the supplies used in this video. So, what are we doing here? We're doing a head-to-head battle of the two lines to see if there's a noticeable difference in how they perform. Please keep in mind, I had all my cyborg parts replaced recently, so I am, once again, only human and therefore prone to making mistakes and not being entirely mechanically identical and perfect between the two tests, but I honestly think that regardless of that, the results are pretty obvious. For each line, I chose the closest comparison of colors that I could, and we're just working with two cool tone primary sets here. Well, as cool as I could get given the paints that I had available. The Shinhan Professional set comes in 30 different colors, but I only had 3 from the PWC line, so had to do my best to match between the two. It wasn't completely successful, but it was successful enough is what I'm saying. I'll list the names of the actual colors I used from each line down in the materials section of the doobly-doo. I wanted to keep it a secret which side was which, but, well, being able to talk openly about how they performed is going to be easier if I can just name them. So the left page is Shinhan PWC line, which is their actual professional artist grade line, and the right side is the Shinhan Professional line, which is actually their student grade. To keep things slightly less crazy, I'll be referring henceforth to the paints on the left page as PWC and the ones on the right page as the student paints. One test that was requested for these paints was to see how they layered, so let's talk about that because it was actually a really interesting test. The red used on the student side of the page was a bit more opaque than the PWC side of the page, and it started to pull up layers underneath it, I'd say within the third layered section, and there really wasn't a big shift in intensity after the second layer. This could absolutely be due to me not using a super consistent wash at first, but through the course of the test painting, I eventually realized that any portion of the piece where I didn't get the results I was looking for, either because additional layers of pigment never really seemed to increase the saturation, or because there was a sort of dead dullness to the area, it was because that red was involved in some way. So what I'm saying is this particular red from the student set isn't that great, but all of the other colors were actually pretty nice. I'm especially impressed with the layerability of both blues, and while it's pretty much impossible to see because yellow is so bright, both yellows did an okay job as far as layering goes. The red on the PWC side is very clearly a much less opaque color, and even all the way to the end of this layering chart, it still kept making a difference in saturation. So to say the PWC paints are far superior in layering to the student paints is almost an understatement. The PWC paints are significantly more transparent and they're very light, is all I can describe it as. The student paints seem a bit more dense and heavy in the way their pigmentation works, sort of. But I also would say that when they dry, the finish is a bit more dull. All of the paints lifted pretty much identically, and I'd also say they each have a very modest bloom or flow when used wet on wet, which for people who like to really precisely control where their paints go, this is a very nice property. I know it's sort of harder to see the flow test on the PWC side, and that's my bad because I used a lighter concentration of pigment in the dots on that side. For the color wheels, I did let the swatches of each color at least mostly dry before reactivating them and blending them along the wheel, which shows not only that they mix super nicely without getting gross and muddy, but that, just like the lift tests, they do reactivate on the page if you want them to and can be blended out. Super nice for if you need to soften some edges. For whatever reason, I made a better variety of different neutrals with the student side and pretty much just made a whole lot of different blacks on the PWC side. Back when I originally tested the PWC paints, I remembered struggling to make a good black, so I think I may have let myself go a little cuckoo for a second and not remembered that browns and tans are usually neutral colors people go after too. Oh well. As for the test painting, because it's easy enough for me to draw 2 portraits of myself, that's what I went for here. They're not completely identical, but they're close enough so it shouldn't really matter in the long run. I started off by doing the portrait on the student side because I wanted to use it as the guide for what colors the piece would be overall. Using the paints in their dried half pans, by the way, which I squeezed from the tubes myself, reactivated just fine. I did notice, actually, that to get even a light wash of whatever color I was after, I had to use quite a lot of the paint, and about halfway through this piece I started to really notice just how much paint was being eaten away at. There was nothing wrong with these paints, and I actually think that, especially for the price, they're pretty nice and would totally recommend them to someone who's looking for a large set of multiple colors. I will say, though, that they perform fine, but not pleasurably. What I mean by that is that I never really got the colors that I was looking for in this piece, either because I couldn't make them layer to get a deeper color, like I kept working on the hair and after a few washes just gave up and said it was good enough, but I really would have liked a bit more intensity in there. Any shading I tried with these on the skin just seemed dull and also somewhat ineffective, but it overall came out looking nice enough and was close to where I was aiming. The only reason that I didn't push this piece further is that it actually took an entire day to paint. Between inexplicably long drying times and not really getting what I wanted without taking extra time to layer and layer and layer and then just give up once at max depth, it took a lot of time to just color this in, and I wasn't really willing to spend the rest of forever on it. I can't tell you why, really, this happened, since it honestly doesn't make all that much sense. But there you have it. The paint wasn't difficult or bad to work with, per se, but it wasn't a joy. In contrast to that, the PWC paints, just like last time, surprised me at how nice and fun and pleasurable they were to work with. I actually think it has a lot to do with their transparency and layerability, and I didn't find it difficult at all to build up depth where I wanted it or keep lightness when I didn't. Working on this side went a lot more smoothly, and maybe that's partly due to it being the second time of making the exact same piece, but I also got the feeling that it has something to do with how soft and smooth these are. Like I said, last time I used these, I was surprised to find that I loved them and accidentally went ahead and did a portrait with them. If a paint is so much fun to work with that it tricks you into making paintings when all you plan to do is swatches, then there's some kind of mystery ingredient in there. It's sort of the opposite of some truly wretched paints that I've used before where I've had to actively fight them to get even close to any result at all. The PWC paints seem like they get exactly to where I want them without much effort, and it's so easy to do that it just naturally encourages me to play and have more fun. I went into this second piece thinking that I'd be annoyed to have to do it again, and I was anything but, even going so far as to find excuses to add just a bit more depth or shadow here and there just so I could play more. And in less time than it took to do the student side, by multiple hours of time. Just like the last time I used these, I really want to get more and experiment. Luckily, a friend gifted me a few more colors, and I'm even more excited now about that fact than I was back when she gave them to me, which is honestly pretty excited because friendship is magical. So, as far as the differences between these paints go, I clearly prefer the PWC to the student brand by a mile, but don't for a second let that fool you into thinking that the student line of Shinhan watercolors aren't any good. If anything, I think that each of these is an excellent example of some of the highest quality available within their respective ranges. The student quality paint doesn't have the layerability, transparency, flowing finish, or mystical hypnotic capabilities that the PWC artist grade has, but I wouldn't expect it to. Student paints are usually duller than professional paints, chalky, weird consistencies, super opaque, and often a gamble as to whether or not they're even particularly usable. These Shinhan student paints are actually nice, pretty, not difficult to use, controllable, liftable, and my favorite part, affordable. I know I always look for the best bang for my buck, and this is certainly a line of student paints that hits that sweet spot of quality, quantity, and affordability. What I want to know is, after seeing my experiences and maybe even pulling on some of your own, what do you think about these two? Do you have one you'd want to try over another? Personally, I'm definitely all about the PWC paints, and I think that even just getting these 3 colors to start is a great experience for anyone, as long as you don't mind going heavy on having to mix your own colors from scratch. The student paints? Well, I think this is an excellent set for most people. If you're just starting out with watercolors, there are plenty of different flavors to keep your color palette sated without having to worry about mixing. The price is exceptional, and the quality is decent. Even if you already have some experience with watercolors, let's say maybe you're looking to upgrade your kit but aren't ready to spend the big bucks on some pro paint, this is a really good mid-grade paint, and I honestly don't really have anything bad to say about them. I just love the PWC a bit more. It's kind of like saying you love pie. Yes, of course you love pie because pie is great and everyone should love it because that's what we're talking about here. But if you bring out a chocolate lavender pie from Nomadic Pies in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, I'll lose my dang mind because while I love pie, I love that particular one a lot. Pie is good, but some pies are just even more good. You dig? The Shinhan student grade paint is pie in general, but the Shinhan PWC paint is that amazing, creamy, decadent, delightfully floral, and whipped cream top chocolate lavender masterpiece. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and tell me all about your favorite pie because pie is a good time indeed. Well, friends, that's it for me. Until I see you next time, I wish you peace, love, and your favorite pie. Bye!